The dry air was heavy with silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves as Joey, a sturdy male kangaroo, paced back and forth. Something wasn't right. Matilda, the pregnant female of their group, hadn't returned from her morning grazing. Joey's sharp instincts told him this wasn't just a casual delay. Without hesitation, he followed faint tracks through the dusty terrain, the ground still warm from the early sun. Each imprint in the earth felt like a clue pulling him toward something he wasn't sure he wanted to find. His journey led him to an abandoned fence line, its old barbed wire twisting cruelly through the landscape. There she was, Matilda, her sleek fur marred with blood where the wire had cut into her side. Her eyes held a mix of fear and exhaustion, her movements restricted by the entanglement. She struggled weakly but stopped when she saw Joey. A soft, almost pleading sound escaped her, and Joey's heart sank. He stepped closer, nuzzling her gently to offer comfort, but it wasn't enough. The wire wouldn't budge, and Matilda's strength was waning. Joey hesitated, torn between staying to protect her and seeking help. The vastness of the Outback stretched before him, offering no guarantees. Yet, he knew he couldn't free her alone. With a final glance at Matilda, he bounded away, his powerful legs propelling him into the unknown. The urgency in his movements mirrored the pounding of his heart. Every second mattered. The terrain was unforgiving. Joey navigated through rocky outcrops and dense patches of thorny bushes that scratched at his fur. The midday sun blazed overhead, sapping his energy with each leap, but he pressed on. His mind raced, searching for a solution. Every corner of this land held memories, but today, it felt unfamiliar and indifferent to his plight. As he traveled, Joey encountered other creatures. A group of cockatoos perched noisily on a tree, their white feathers gleaming. Joey stopped, staring at them as if willing them to understand. But their chatter ceased as they took flight, disappearing into the sky. Next, he came across a wombat ambling slowly through the underbrush. Joey approached cautiously, his body language urgent. The wombat froze, sniffing the air before retreating into its burrow. Frustration bubbled within Joey. Time was slipping away. Hours seemed to pass when finally, Joey's nose caught a faint but unfamiliar scent: humans. He slowed, his body tense, ears twitching as he crept closer. A small campsite came into view. A tent stood near a smoldering fire pit, and two humans sat nearby, talking in low voices. Joey observed from the safety of the bushes, his instincts screaming caution. Humans were unpredictable, and approaching them was a risk. But Matilda's image filled his mind, her trapped form, the faint sound of her cries. He had no choice. Summoning his courage, Joey stepped into the open. The humans noticed him almost immediately. They froze, their conversation halting as they stared at the unexpected visitor. Joey held his ground, his eyes fixed on them, his body language deliberate. He hopped a few steps forward, then stopped, turning his head in the direction of the fence line. The humans exchanged puzzled looks, but Joey repeated the action, his movements insistent. Slowly, understanding dawned on their faces. Joey felt a flicker of hope as one of the humans grabbed a backpack and some tools, while the other gestured for him to lead the way. Without waiting, Joey turned and began retracing his steps, glancing back occasionally to ensure they were following. The humans struggled to keep up, their boots crunching against the dry earth. The path wasn't easy for them. They stumbled over roots and rocks, pausing to catch their breath. But Joey didn't slow. Every leap felt heavier, his muscles aching, but he pushed forward, driven by a single purpose. The journey back felt endless. Each moment stretched as Joey's thoughts raced. Was Matilda still fighting? Would they reach her in time? These questions fueled his determination, even as exhaustion clawed at him. The human's presence behind him was both a comfort and a gamble. He didn't know if they could truly help, but they were his only chance. The humans followed Joey with growing urgency, their steps quicker now as they realized he wasn't leading them aimlessly. Sweat glistened on their brows as they pushed through the rugged terrain, spurred on by the kangaroo's determination. Joey paused only briefly to check that they were keeping up, his eyes flicking between them and the direction of the fence where Matilda was trapped. He could feel time slipping away and pressed on, his body moving with a desperate energy that the humans seemed to understand. When they finally reached the fence line, the humans froze at the sight of Matilda. The pregnant kangaroo lay tangled in the cruel barbed wire, her sides rising and falling in shallow breaths. Her eyes darted toward Joey as he approached, her trembling body momentarily soothed by his presence. Joey stood protectively by her side, his gaze shifting to the humans as if urging them to act. The humans moved quickly, dropping their gear and pulling out tools. One of them retrieved a pair of wire cutters while the other knelt beside Matilda, speaking in a soft, calming voice. Matilda flinched as they approached, her instincts warning her to flee, but she couldn't move. Sensing her fear, Joey stood closer, his solid frame a reassuring barrier between Matilda and the unfamiliar figures. The humans worked carefully, trying not to startle her as they examined the barbed wire. The first cut sent a sharp twang through the air, making Matilda jolt. Joey stiffened, his muscles tensing as he watched every movement, ready to intervene if necessary. The humans continued, their hands steady despite the pressure. Each snip of the wire brought Matilda closer to freedom, but it was a slow process. The barbs had dug deep, catching on her fur and skin. Blood matted the area around the wounds, and every movement seemed to cause her pain. Joey nuzzled her gently, his touch a silent promise that she wasn't alone. The final strand of wire was the most difficult. It had wrapped tightly around her hind leg, and removing it without causing further injury required precision. The human with the wire cutters leaned in closer, their brow furrowed in concentration. Matilda whimpered softly, her body trembling as they worked. Joey shifted uneasily, his instincts screaming to protect her, but he stayed still, trusting that these strangers were trying to help. After what felt like an eternity, the last piece of wire snapped free. Matilda collapsed onto the ground, her body exhausted but finally free. Joey moved to her side immediately, nuzzling her and emitting soft, reassuring sounds. The humans stepped back, giving them space but staying nearby in case they were needed. One of them pulled out a small first aid kit, hesitating for a moment before approaching again. Joey watched warily but didn't stop them as they carefully treated Matilda's wounds, cleaning the cuts and applying a soothing ointment. The process was quick, and the humans retreated once more, respecting the kangaroo's need for distance. Matilda lay still for a few moments, her sides heaving as she gathered her strength. Joey remained close, his presence steady and grounding. Slowly she began to rise, her legs trembling under her weight. Joey nudged her gently, encouraging her to stand. With a final push of effort, Matilda found her footing. Her movements were slow and unsteady, but she was upright. A flicker of relief passed through Joey as he watched her take a few tentative steps. The humans stood silently, watching the scene unfold. They didn't speak, as if afraid to disrupt the fragile moment. One of them glanced at the other, a small smile of satisfaction crossing their face. Their work here was done. Without a word, they began packing up their tools, stepping back to let the kangaroos have their space. Joey turned to watch them for a moment, his gaze lingering as if acknowledging their help. Then he turned back to Matilda, who was now walking more steadily. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the landscape, Joey and Matilda began their slow journey back to the mob. Matilda's injuries would heal, and the life growing within her remained safe. Joey stayed close, his protective instincts still on high alert, but there was a newfound calm in his movements. The ordeal was over, and Matilda was free. Behind them, the humans lingered for a moment before heading back to their campsite. They had played their part in the story, leaving the wild to heal and continue its cycle. As Joey and Matilda disappeared into the horizon, the Outback fell silent once more, a quiet reminder of the resilience of life and the connections that bind all living things.